Hey, welcome everybody. Everyone looks alive, looks well. Hope everybody's had a good afternoon, a good conference so far. My name is Justin. You can see the rest on that slide here, but I'm joined by my colleague here, Ryan. And today we're here to talk to you about the nuts and bolts of updating apps. We're going to discuss some of the behind the scenes things that happen, when you install apps on macOS, but we're also going to talk about some of the challenges and also security considerations that come along with it. So you guys ready? Yeah, that's what I like. Okay, cool.
I can't hear you.
So let's kind of talk about some of the current things in the state of patch management. Let's talk about it. So, starting with open source. We have lots of amazing open source tools available to us out there. A lot of them built by some of our peers here in the industry. These include automated package managers, GUIs to build packages, and more. And though these tools are great, they are maintained by somebody on their own free time, and that can lead to some longer development cycles. And as a new IT admin, there can be some steep learning curves with that associated with that as well. Though they do their best to keep up with this, there can be some limited support associated with some of those things as well. And then some other considerations are, malicious contributions. How can we reasonably verify where are the software package sources coming from? How secure is the infrastructure that is being maintained to deliver some of these things? And has there been sufficient testing done to validate these items? And also, without further ado, package hosting. So what are the additional overhead costs to hosting packages, delivering and securing those things as well? And as previously mentioned before, testing. Have we done sufficient testing, not only on the developer side, but as admins ourselves before we push things into production? So that's another consideration to make as well. And most importantly, inconsistent user experience. Above anything else, this is paramount. We want to make sure that we deliver a consistent and a reliable experience to our users. So we'll talk about how some of those things are done, and we'll get into that further on in this presentation as well. So to kind of start off, let's talk about the different app install media types. So our favorite, the installer package. We're going to talk about some of the advantages to using this installer package. So first and foremost, a bundled installation. So we can package all the required files and scripts and metadata into one file, streamlining the installation process. We can automate the installation process, minimizing the user intervention, ensuring a consistent install experience. And it's widely accepted, so friendly user installation experience and flexible deployment option on most MDM platforms. And also supports digital signing, allowing users to verify the authenticity of integrity of the package. And in theory, all of them should be signed, wink, wink. Next, the Apple disk image, or more commonly referred to as DMG. What is it? And it's a file format that is commonly used on macOS to distribute software. And it serves as a virtual disk that mounts on the system. It's a self-contained disk image, and it is advantageous for compression. So you can include application files and other necessary components in that disk image itself. It can be read-only or read-write, and which is great for creating things like backup archives as well as living software as well. And they can also be encrypted and protected, with a password to ensure no unauthorized access to the contents. Users can simply double-click the DMG and, of course, drag and drop a package to install the application as well. So another fairly easy installation mechanism that you can deliver to your users. Next, the tarball. So tarball allows us to combine multiple files, and you can bundle your archives into one single directory, preserving the structure and the metadata. So your file permissions, timestamps, etc. More importantly, it's platform independent, so you can use this not only just with macOS, but with Windows and several other operating systems as well. And also has some compression compatibility as well. So it can be compressed using tools like gzip, bzip2, etc. So also another flexible deployment option. But more importantly, it shouldn't matter. We should be able to deploy software to our users, and we'll talk next about what happens when a user installs an app versus an admin. So, Ryan.
All right. You're going to need to click that. There you go. So basically what I'm doing is talking about the differences between installs initiated by a user and installs initiated by an admin, and the differences between those. Typically, if a user is installing software, obviously, the majority of the time when they're installing software, it's going to be interactive. We're talking things like double-clicking on a package, the DMG, like Justin mentioned, dragging an app from a DMG to the applications folder. Typically, straightforward installs that folks would do, even with limited technical ability. Then you have kind of package managers like Homebrew, MacPorts, things like that an admin doesn't necessarily need to do, but likely an admin is using the command line tool in most cases. For installs initiated by Mac admin, typically we're talking about MDM type of installations. Typically these would be vendor provided tools like a package that you could upload into your MDM, and that MDM could install that, or using something like the install enterprise application MDM command, which is relatively widespread amongst MDM providers. Basically, these are silent installs. I wouldn't necessarily say some of these tools would be great for updates, but definitely for installs. These MDM provided tools are definitely out there and used. Why and when should we automate? So, there's definitely some things that you have to consider when you automate. I mean, the idea, typically what you want to do is, automate everything. That's what people want, right? But when there are changes to applications, in some cases you need a human to actually verify what's going on. So there have been some times where, and I'll get into this installer script section real quick, but things like Chrome, where Chrome, the certificate used to sign Chrome changes, and so you don't necessarily want to just say, okay, I'm going to trust every certificate that Chrome is signed by. You need, some human may need to do some intervention sometimes. So again, choosing when to automate versus when you may, involve a human to do some changing or some kind of validations is big. So installer scripts. Essentially what we're talking about is kind of pre and post install scripts that could either be bundled in a package or ran alongside the installation. So say, thinking something like Installamator, when you install some application and then you need to install a privileged helper afterwards, or maybe you need to remove the application beforehand. So some of these scripts that occur either before or after the application to either kind of make ready the device for the application being installed, or again, install some privileged helper or get the application into a state that the user can then use it. Again, another kind of scenario may be installing a preference file so that screens don't show up when you launch the app, these types of things. Here's an example of kind of a script that's people have seen scripts like this. Essentially what this is doing is it's going to install Chrome. So what we're doing is we're defining a URL for Chrome. We're curling down Chrome locally onto the device, the DMG. We're attaching that DMG, hopefully silently with the no browse and quiet flags. We then have access to the application that's inside the DMG. We then kind of blindly copy that application into the applications folder. And we're going to come back to this because I'm going to poke holes in this. But yeah, and then we're removing kind of our work files, and then we just assume that Chrome is installed. So this is this is kind of a very generic script, but I've seen environments with scripts exactly like this. And it's, this is a way to automate installs, but again, I'll poke some holes in this in a minute.
Awesome. Handling updates. As part of obviously the app installation process, we install the app on the device, but then we got to ensure how do we keep these things up to date, and there lies the challenge. There's some built-in open source frameworks such as Sparkle and Squirrel. Some of the popular examples, Squirrel you may have seen used in an app like Discord. Sparkle is used with several popular apps, Things, Daisy Disc. There's thousands of apps that leverage that framework. But once again, some of the challenges with that, poor user experience. It does rely on the IT admin to have a fairly robust knowledge of these frameworks and how to deploy them. There's lots of customization available with them, but there is quite a bit of work to get that set up and done. It can be disruptive to the user. If we're prompting them in the middle of work, or we maybe have some unexpected behavior that shows up later when they're running the application, or when we're seeking to update that app. That could be a loss of productivity there. And then maybe broken feedback loop. And what I mean more specifically about that is, how do we ensure the consistency and experience of what we deployed, without, of course, testing is part of that, but, without actually hearing from the user or being hands-on with the device. Lots of times, we're often informed too late in that process about, potential issues. And also, admin permissions, right? So a lot of us are operating in environments where users have standard permissions and not privileged access to the device. If they're being prompted to finish an update or install a helper, you're going to get a call saying, like, I have a prompt asking me for a password that I don't have. These are some of the many things that we see, amongst other things, when trying to handle those updates as well. This next example is just kind of showing an example of how you can use the find command to find applications that contain the Sparkle framework. So we're just using find, and we return about 10 results looking through the directory here. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of applications. These are just ones that were installed locally on the device we had, but as I mentioned, there's thousands out there that leverage this framework as well. Next, we're going to dive into security a bit. Okay, cool. So we'll talk about potential threat vectors, challenges with mitigating and patching with vendor-sec tools, and also talk a bit about the built-in macOS tools and other recommended security checks as well. So getting into some of the potential threat vectors, user admin rights. If we do have users that have privileged access to the device, they can unintentionally install things in root locations where we don't want them to have access, and then us as admins are left to deal with the fallout with that. And also InfoSec team will call you on the phone and give you a nice happy birthday song. With that privileged access comes, potentially malicious package, putting things, distributing files in different install locations, leaving you to, maybe use a third-party tool or do some manual work in cleaning that up. And then obviously unsigned software packages, bad, and privileged users could bypass Gatekeeper and proceed with installation of any package file. And then, of course, validating checksums ensures that you know the expected contents actually contain, or that the package contains the expected contents. And if you're, using a binary to pull down such as curl, requiring TLS to ensure that communication is encrypted when the data is in transit. So those are a couple of the potential threat vectors here. And Ryan's going to kind of go back to the script that we mentioned earlier.
Yes, I wonder if you can actually see. That's not too bad. When Justin mentioned requiring TLS, there are, if you have to go through any sort of a SOC 2 audit, many of your services that may be encompassed within the audit typically would require some level of TLS, typically TLS 1.2 or above. And so, again, trying to kind of show some issues with a script like this, there's a curl, flag for curl to set the minimum curl version. And essentially, any script that I see that uses curl doesn't use this flag. So you're basically at the mercy of the server that is serving that content, and maybe it has TLS set up, maybe not. Enforcing a flag like this, say if you're using a script that potentially is open source, maybe adding this flag might be helpful to ensure that the server you're downloading from requires TLS 1.2 or above. The next thing here, again, this script is meant for installations. If Chrome was actually running in the event that this script ran, you'd basically, you'd cause an issue. So you basically overwrite Chrome. Chrome actually would continue to run because it's running in memory, but there's going to be some fallout for that. Again, this is meant specifically for installations. Probably in this script you should check to see if the application is running or if the application exists prior to just blindly copying it to the applications folder. Also, we're not doing any validations on the DMG. So if this was a package, you could validate the code signature of the package. In fact, many people don't know that many vendors actually sign their DMGs too. So you can use CodeSign, command line tool, to get signature information for a DMG prior to installation. Also, you can validate things like the team ID, which is kind of a simple check, or the designated requirement of an application prior to installation as well. And in this case, in this script, we're not doing any of those. And then again, we're not even really validating that Chrome got installed. We just assume that the installation worked. We're not validating that the application is intact or the integrity of that application. We're just assuming that it was installed. So again, some of these scripts, if you're less potentially less technical and you get a script like this, or you've inherited a script like this from an environment that you started working in, it's good to kind of take a look at some of these issues, because it could cause you some potential issues down the line security-wise.
Okay.
This is kind of an example of how you can sign a package if you're interested in doing so. Essentially creates a package from a root path, and you can specify the identifier of that particular package, the install location, whatever version it is, and then you can sign it with a certificate that exists on the device that you're doing the signing on, and then you can create your package. This is, again, just a shell command. You can do this. This is something that, if you're creating packages and you're using some sort of a GUI application to create the packages, you probably should sign these. But this is a way that you could do it with the command line tool if you wanted to.
Cool.
This next slide is essentially showing how you can validate the code signature of a package. So we're just using package util. There's a flag called check signature, and then you just basically pass in an argument of a path, and then we'll see some of the information related to the code signature of that package. Some of the things that we'll see is if it's notarized or not, when it was potentially signed, if there's a timestamp, and the certificate chain related to the signature of that package. So again, when we talk about automating installations or automating updates, there are definitely mechanisms that you can use, even kind of simple in terms of doing something in a shell script or bash script, that you can do to protect yourself from potentially malicious packages. And this command is basically, how I mentioned in our Chrome installation example, we could actually validate information about the application itself, because we kind of have access to that application when we attach the DMG prior to installation. So again, things like the bundle ID of that application, who signed it, when it was signed, if it's notarized or not. So a lot of things that we can check prior to installation when we don't have something like a package. And there's, again, that certificate chain that we can see there.
Awesome.
And these arrows are kind of out of order, but it's all right. You get the gist.
Cool. Next, we're going to kind of get into some of the built-in macOS security tools. So starting with Gatekeeper, which we mentioned before. So with Gatekeeper, it protects against the distribution of malicious plugins on your computer when you're launching an application or when you launch a package or an application. These settings can be configured by MDM, and ensures that the software has been signed and does require user approval. So many of you might recognize the next slide here with this prompt of, "Are you sure you want to open this application?" So this is Gatekeeper, which is obviously built-in technology in macOS, notifying us that, hey, are you sure you want to open this file? We can't necessarily verify its authenticity. Notarization. This ensures that the apps are free from malware. This is another service provided by Apple. This staples a notarization ticket so Gatekeeper can verify and launch the application as well. So this is also another way to protect against malicious files or malware being installed in the system. And an app can be notarized, and that ticket can be revoked later if it's found to be malicious. So that's another benefit of notarization as well. It's also available to developers shipping outside of the App Store. So any third-party developers who are not necessarily going through the App Store approval process, but do build packages for macOS, this is another protection that's out there to ensure that the authenticity of the package that's being installed on the device. Next, protect. Oh, nice.
These are out of order.
Yeah, these are
Maybe
out
just
of order.
build it out.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just build it out. Sorry, these are out of order. Excuse us. Built-in malware remediation tool for the Mac. And what's cool about this is that not only can it detect that application or that malicious processor file, it can block and remediate without requiring a reboot as well. It automatically checks for this content on the first launch. And also, if an app has been changed in the file system, it can also do that detection. And those signatures are being updated and maintained by Apple. So, we can, without us having to do any additional work, that kind of maintenance item is being done for us in the background by Apple, which is great. This is just a brief, example of what a dialogue you would get if Apple is being blocked. So, how can we make this easier? So, we're going to talk about a couple of open source tools. So Ryan, if you want to take that away.
Yeah. There are several open source tools, one being maybe the most prominent is AutoPackage. Essentially, AutoPackage is kind of a set of tools, many set of tools, community curated by the community to create packages and create recipes to either install the software or perform updates to the software in a few different, could be MDMs or software installation tools. It did some of the things that we talked about in terms of automating security aspects of the installation, like validating code signatures, validating checksums. It can do some of these things. Even things like scanning the file with a virus total, things like that. Monkey, typically you would use AutoPackage to create your packages, and then you would either upload them to your MDM or distribute them in some service. And one of the services could be Monkey. Monkey is a service that you can host on-prem. So again, it's something, there's work involved here. And you can then distribute updates or installs to your fleet kind of outside of your MDM as well. And another one, very common, really a nice community-focused tool, Installator. Very big script. I think I've said it several times. It's like 7,000 lines. So it's kind of one of those things where we have I show the image and kind of walk through the very short script, and it's pretty easy to digest. We can go through that, and I can kind of tell you all the pieces of it. A 7,000 line script really can't do that, and you can't either. Probably nobody has been through all of Installator, but it is a very neat tool that you can use to do installations of software or updates. Again, it's all of these tools being open source. They're free to use. They definitely come with kind of some technical knowledge that you need to have. You're not going to just kind of set these up very easily and get everything working the way that you want. But they are available. There is kind of a big community behind each of these, and very widely used open source tools to do installations and updates on macOS. And then some vendor-provided tools. There are quite a few to perform updates specifically. One really good one we think is Microsoft Auto Update. How you can configure MAU or Microsoft Auto Update, the flexibility in how updates are, how you can kind of customize those updates is great with MAU. So we kind of, I guess, I'll move on, but MAU is good. Adobe RUM. So this is a command line tool that is not really configurable. Basically, it's a scriptable command line tool that you can use to perform updates to things like Adobe Reader, Photoshop, some of these things that you can't, once the application is installed, say it could be installed by Adobe Creative Cloud, right? So maybe you don't have a package for Photoshop, but you're installing Adobe Creative Cloud and the user has access to install Photoshop. You can use RUM to detect updates for those applications and perform the updates, again, kind of automatically via script method. So that's cool. Mozilla Fuse is another vendor-provided update mechanism, kind of an addition to Mozilla. And then there's Automox, which you'll have to Google because I don't have a ton of information on that. They don't have a ton of information out there. So, but yeah, it's another tool that you can use to perform updates outside of your MDM, and that there are definitely some vendor-provided tools that are available, sometimes free, sometimes not so free.
Cool.
There's one that's better than all those, though, and it's Electronic Patch. If you want to look at that.
Yeah, he did it. Cool. So that concludes our presentation, but we wanted to go ahead and open it up for questions. So thank you, guys.
Who wants to get hit with the red block? Or the blue block, my bad.
Maybe
Anybody?
anyone? Bueller?
Bueller?
Anyone?
Oh, there we go.
Yeah, you won't be able to hear. Because
Here, we can
I don't
repeat
want to
it.
hit
We
anybody
can
with
repeat
this.
it. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you.
Hello.
Hey.
What kind of compliance standards do you guys have, like SOC 2 and all that fun stuff?
Right. You said,
You're talking specifically about patch?
Yeah.
You should come talk to us.
Huh?
yeah, SOC 2 type 2, yeah.
Okay. Good to know.
Yeah. Cool. We got the post-lunch crowd. This is great.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind if I ask about your
Please.
patch product.
Please.
You know, I was around when Fleet Smith got Sherlocked, and they were the darlings at the time because they had their own patch. And I've seen other big name MDMs, for example, Jamf with their app catalog, that seem to be developing. I would say partnerships with the sources of some of their app updates. Are you guys doing that? So you're getting updates from the source, or are you building updates for your patch product? Or if you could talk about what your approach is for that.
Are you specifically asking, like, say in Google Chrome as an example? Are we hosting packages for Chrome, or are they coming from the vendor? Is that your question?
Yeah, well, that's part of it, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and what the philosophy is for that. I feel that there was some discussion and debate in the industry at the time of, well, if as an MDM we provide patching services for apps that you're going to use, then we incur some liability for that, as opposed to if you as an MDM user build your own packages.
Right.
To install updates for apps for your users.
Yeah.
That's on you.
That's on you to do and test.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so
I think
there's a bit of a,
I think there's something to be said about distributing somebody else's software, which is not what we're doing. So, not to throw anybody under the bus, but Jamf is distributing software, right? So, some of these, third-party software patch management providers are distributing software. So there could be some liability in that. That's not necessarily what we're doing. We're basically defining by the way, this talk was not about patch, but we didn't plant him either, by the way. But we're kind of cataloging a ton of metadata about software. Right. Checksums, versions, URLs, all of these things. And so technically, we're not distributing software, we're cataloging a ton of data. And then we're providing a lot of great features in order to perform installations or updates of that software. And then the client device is obtaining that software from the vendor. Now, there are some scenarios where it may be advantageous for us to cache the software. Yeah. And that's something that we need to consider if we want to go down that route, because it could be potentially used as a backup. But again, and again, we didn't really talk anything about our product at all. But again, we do have a ton of data specifically. Like, say, if you use Firefox as an example, URLs of older versions of Firefox, what the DMG code signature was, what the checksum of that was, what the version of that application would be when you would install it, all of these things that probably aren't available to some of these folks that are potentially taking an application, say that's in a DMG, and creating a package out of that. You're then, the integrity of that application is now on you, because you've then taken it from the vendor's provided install media, you're putting it into your own, hopefully you're signing that as well, and then you're kind of distributing that, and then you have to lay over top of it all of the kind of the headaches of making sure that if there's an update, what are all the things that you need to check when you're performing an update? Well, you need to make sure that the application is either not running or you need to perform some sort of notification, so there's a ton of stuff, that goes into patching. That's one of the things that Justin mentioned is the different install media types. There's a ton. There's package DMG, there's packages in DMGs, there's apps in zip files, there's, it's nuts. But, ultimately, should it matter? I mean, everybody goes, okay, the package is like the creme de la creme of installers. Well, that's because you can double click it and you can install it. But we're automating the installation. Is there really an advantage to having everything in a package? I don't know if there is. I kind of like the idea of taking something that's identical to what the vendor provided and then installing it kind of in the way that the vendor intended rather than taking that and putting it into a package. And I could go on, but hopefully that answers your question.
I agree with that philosophy.
Yeah.
And there's opinions, some, there are some organizations like maybe if we've just talked to somebody that's at a financial institution and maybe you don't want, you have a real restricted firewall. You don't want to download things specifically from even Chrome, or Firefox or whatever the case may be. And so like some of these situations, maybe you have to whitelist certain domains and things like that. So, there's a lot of considerations when, you talk about updating or installing software. So kind of the idea of this is just to get information out there, not necessarily, try to change someone's opinion, really just, make sure people are informed on the different things that maybe you should think about when performing updates or installations, especially when you have kind of a script that's doing something that you don't necessarily maybe you trust because you're technically not to the point where you can poke the holes in the thing. So.
Yep. Cool.
Any other questions?
We don't bite.
We got one more.
Nice.
I wish we had our plushies. We could toss some plushies
Yeah,
out
we
there.
could toss. We could make it rain on there.
Yeah, make it rain.
Yeah.
I'm a little struggling between patch automation and installation customization. Taking, for example, Zoom as one example, when we install or update Zoom, there are options you could choose single sign-on those URL, so user won't go to Google because we have a single sign configured. So right now we are not using those automated update method because we need to run we need to add those parameters in the installation command as parameters. I know probably we could do that by modifying plist or even better if there are options in MDM, so we can separate configuration from installation. So how do you evaluate customization, the balance between customization and standard automation or installation?
Yeah, I guess I have an opinion on it, but I don't necessarily know if it's it's definitely not a fact. I think, one of the things that I think about a lot with patch is, not trying to encroach in MDM territory, right? And what I mean by that is, what is considered an installation and an update versus when we're kind of getting into managing a device. And definitely, I don't know specifically for Zoom, is it like a plist that you have to put in a location when you do the installation? Does it have to be, I know Zoom is a package, does it have to be like a plist that's in the same directory as the package when it's installed? I don't necessarily know exactly how that works.
Yeah, for us, it's just it's simple to just put the parameter in the installation command line instead of manipulating plist because that's a little complicated.
So you're running you're probably running like the installer command.
Yes.
With
Dash,
is it using
dash,
a choices file?
Yeah, dash single sign domain.
Oh, it's in the So I mean, that's something that are you talking specifically about patch, or are you talking about just any
Automated mechanism, I
Yeah.
think.
Any automated
Yeah, automated installation
installation.
mechanism.
Yeah, I think that I would assume that if there was not what's called a processor, which is kind of like an extension to auto package, probably there's a processor that can allow that, where you can adjust your package recipe or your installation recipe for that package to include some of those parameters. I haven't seen. Again, I haven't seen that for auto package, but I could almost guarantee you that probably exists if you were to use something like auto package.
I don't know what tool you're putting it into, but yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you did it with a script, you for sure can. I mean, I assume I feel like did I talk with you last year?
Probably.
You're trying to make,
familiar.
You're trying to make your own patch management solution, are you not? No comment?
No comment.
Yeah, so, I mean, there's another example is VMware Fusion, right? So you can install VMware Fusion, you can update VMware Fusion, but then if you want to activate VMware Fusion, I don't even know the command off the top. It's like something in it or some command that you can run to essentially activate VMware Fusion with a license.
Right.
And you can do that after the installation. So you can perform the installation with something like patch or with auto package or whatever, and then you can just run a simple command to do the activation in what we would call like a post-install type script, right? So, it would be cool if there was some sort of a standard for, hey, if you're going to activate or customize this particular application, here's what you do. But that, every vendor, just like how some vendor they're going to create a package, or they're going to create a DMG with a package, or a zip file with a DMG when it makes no sense. They just do whatever they want. So, you can automate anything you want. You could definitely do it. It's just, yeah, it's you got to build it because that's what you want to do. So you just have to build it.
Yeah.
I got you. I got you.
Cool.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
On the front or no? Yep, do we have one up front here?
Yeah, so generally, like my best practice for this sort of thing is I, have the installer update process, actually install the software, and then I'll have like a separate process that will handle the licensing, and then another process that will handle the configuration, and that way I can layer them all separately, because everyone needs the updates, everyone needs the patches, but like different departments will get like a different license in some cases, and then different departments or areas will also get a different configuration depending on their needs. So in my tool, when I automate these things, I just have, it can detect if that configuration is in place or not, and then place it there if needed, and then those are targeted to different areas and departments and that sort of thing. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So we primarily use JamPro as our MDM, and if in that type of scenario, we would probably create a policy scope to this department and a policy scope to this department. In our environments, we're going to use patch, and so we have a simple script that would install. I'll just use VMware Fusion as the example. It just does the installation or the update, and then we would have a post-install script. Likely in JamPro, we could have a parameter that has the key, and we can adjust that per department, right? So
Yep.
definitely, I mean, that's essentially exactly what we would do, and what, if we're doing some sort of professional services for somebody, what we would recommend, because it just makes, again, if you have some sort of a patch management solution, like sometimes, again, like there's an area where you go, okay, is this part of patching, or is this part of the management
Right.
of the device? So, it's there's no right or wrong, I guess. There's just, sometimes we think about manageability and scalability of certain methods that we choose. If we have a lot of JamPro instances or a lot of customers and a lot of variation in software, we have to kind of take a route that makes it advantageous for us to easily manage that moving forward. And like, if we're baking stuff into a package and then somebody on the team leaves and then, we have to inspect the package to see what's going on. Like, it's more transparent if you use some sort of post-install script and the
Yep.
user we can just see what's happening, So that's my opinion, I guess.
Yeah, that's also my philosophy is like, I don't want to touch the installer from the vendor at all, and I want to handle everything else after the fact
Right.
and layer that on, so I know that what's coming from the vendor is untouched. And really, the only exception to that is when that vendor is hostile to silent installs, and then I may have to do something to counteract that. But
Yeah, I mean,
most
those-
vendors, I can find a workaround and not have to do anything.
I think Cisco, good old Cisco, what is the, WebEx, right?
WebEx,
So it's a package that has an application and there's a post install that launches the app after it's installed.
Right.
So if you install the package, it's just going to launch the app. So even if the app's not running, the app's going to be running right after you install that package. So there are some times where you go, okay, maybe what I want to do, and we have functionality for this in Patch, is where we don't install that package, we actually extract the app from the package, so we eliminate the stupid post-install. Sorry, Cisco, if you're listening. And then we just install the app, and we don't have to worry about the post-install. So, yeah, and there's so much stuff related to updates. And one solution is not always best for another, and we recognize that, and so yeah, I mean, we're glad to have the conversation with everybody and kind of just talk about, again, it's opinions, and I think in some of the security, these are facts we're talking about. These are not really opinions if we're talking about checking signatures and things like that. But
Yeah, but yeah, that's a good example of like a vendor being hostile to silent install.
Exactly.
Another one you'll see is like the vendor wants to open a web page after an install or uninstall.
log in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And if they don't give us flags to disable that, then it's incredibly frustrating.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, Jonathan back. All the way back.
Chuck it.
All the way back.
Pass it back. It's great.
Yeah.
Test. All right, since you mentioned Jamf,
Yep.
and that's your sort of platform of choice, and Electrona Patch is integrated into it, if you don't have Jamf, can you use Electrona Patch, and can you kind of talk a little bit about Patch and how it could be used in multiple different kinds of environments?
Yeah, because
Yeah,
Patch is
so
MDM agnostic. Right?
Patch is MDM agnostic. So basically, if you have an MDM that can install a profile, then Patch should work with it and install a package or run a script. So we have install. Again, this talk was not about Patch, but
Hey, here we are.
yeah,
Here we are.
this is more about Patch than our sponsor talk, by the way. But yeah, I mean, you know, if you can install a profile and a package, then you can install Patch. So we have some, I don't want to say like integration with Jamf Pro, but we have some API connectivity to Jamf Pro with our desktop app. So we can do things like the configuration profile that you would use to configure Patch. You can upload directly into Jamf Pro from our desktop app. You can create policies, self-service policies from the desktop app too. So things like, you know, if you wanted to create a self-service policy for 1Password, you basically can, you know, find 1Password in our app, click the policy button. You can change all the settings related to the policy. If you want it self-service, what the frequency, if you want it to perform update or an install, the icon, it will update the icon, the description. So it basically creates a whole policy for you, and you don't have to then go into Jamf Pro to then tweak something. So again, it's not, you know, it's Jamf's API has allowed us to kind of add that functionality in, and there are other MDM providers that we're looking at that for as well. There's just trying not to get myself in trouble.
Redact.
There are
Considerations?
some of the features that Jamf has are features that people, it's kind of like the norm, you know, and when some of those things don't exist, it's, we have to kind of work around it. So think about Intune. Again, I'm not, one of our guys is doing a talk about Intune and kind of the functionality of it. But, Jamf, with Jamf, you can run a script with a parameter, right? And it sounds so simple. And it's, why can't you not do that? But Intune, you just run a script, right? So say if you wanted to, to install something with patch, you do like a patch install whatever. And with Jamf Pro, you'd have a script that would be Jamf or patch install a parameter, and you can have the same script and you can use that script over and over again. Well, with Intune, you have a script to install Chrome, a script to install Slack. So it's not a, I guess it's not a bug, it's a feature. Is that the thing? Like different MDMs have different capabilities. Some of the APIs that Jamf has provided work well for us and for other people. And I think Intune, they're working on, Microsoft is working on things, but we are looking at other MDMs to see what we can do with patch to kind of allow that the same customizability that we have with Jamf Pro. But yeah, hopefully that. Yeah, yeah. What you name the MDM, and we have a customer that's using it. So yeah. Thanks for the question.
In the back. We got two more back there.
You touched on the differences between deployment and updates and the difficulties in knowing if the user's running stuff and everything else. Some vendors do this fairly well, like Google and Zoom actually have MDM profiles that you can assign that manage the auto updates, right? And if you install from the package, it's approving the daemons and stuff like that ahead of time, so users don't get prompted from passwords and whatnot. Personally, I wish more developers went that direction because it seems like a real easy way for us to manage those updates. But I'm curious, with your product and your experience, have you seen a lot of failures with that kind of model, or is that something you don't think vendors should be trying to do, so that admins manage their own updates and stuff like that? Or just curious if you had thoughts about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unfortunate that a lot of organizations don't put as much effort into patching. I mean, I think that's why we made our tool, to bring the effort down, right? So that you could then get things patched without putting in a ton of work. One of the things that I think about, Chrome's built-in updater is good. For our customers, we typically say, hey, maybe you don't want to use patch to update Chrome because it does a pretty dang good job. And you could use a plist, or if you manage the Chrome browser in Google Workspace, you can actually configure updates from Google Workspace too, so you don't have to push down a profile. Like I mentioned with Microsoft Auto Update, it's pretty good too. Your thought about more vendors going that route and having like a nice update process, I think is good. I think the issue there is, just like with how vendors provide software packages or DMGs or whatever, everybody's going to do something different. So you're going to have your end users seeing dialogues, all sorts of different dialogues. Sometimes users are kind of asked to not trust dialogues, and so if every vendor has their own built-in updater that's doing something slightly different, maybe it requires admin. Chrome's does not. Chrome's does require an admin to install the updater itself, which if you use the package, it does it automatically, which is awesome. But yeah, I mean, I think if you're not doing any sort of patching, then built-in updaters in the apps are great. The next best thing. Like for sure, they should have that. I feel like there should be more options to disable those built-in updaters if you wanted to do that. Things like the dialogue that we show with Spotify. Right. That was on my Mac, and we use patch often, but I sometimes have to disable it because I need to patch things on my Mac. Like I need to test the product in some cases. So yeah, that's kind of, I was talking to Justin about, that particular issue where like we see tickets all the time from people that have some random software that presents a dialogue like that.
And oftentimes it's a helper.
Yeah,
trying to run in the background.
installing the helper that may perform the update and people don't know what to do, or they're a standard user. So, it's if they're a standard user, in some cases those built-in updaters don't even work. But yeah, I mean, I think to quickly answer your question, I think most software, it would be nice if there was a built-in updater. I just think the downside is that consistency. If you want your user to have a consistent update experience, it's not going to be possible unless there is some standard across all apps, which is for sure not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We had one more back there, back left, yeah.
Hey, I had a question for you, and I apologize if it doesn't like fall into the Electrona purview, but
Go ahead, no, please.
so from my understanding, you use Jamf MDM as well, right?
Right.
Yes.
And you use it in tandem with this. I'll read more about Electrona. I don't know much about it. So you use it side by side.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. we did.
So I'm guessing there's some applications that are available that are not available in Jamf's app catalog.
Yeah.
Safe to say, yeah.
Okay. So
There's some.
does Electrona offer like rollback solutions, in case a vendor distributes an application that breaks something that's production critical, and the only option you have before the vendor updates the application is to roll back so you can get users back on the road. Do you have any options for that?
So most of how patches, it was designed to always install the latest, right? So yeah, I mean, that's something that, I'll use Chrome as an example. We talk to customers a lot that say, hey, like we want to be able to test the install, right? And it's like, okay, but do you think you actually are going to perform better testing than Chrome itself or Google itself? And there are definitely some apps out there that, yeah, you probably could, that, they're trash and I scratch my head sometimes seeing some of these apps and like, what, why?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, I think that, yeah, there's opinion, right? But, yeah, I guess it's a hard question. I think, what we've typically done is, in some cases, we've cached on our servers a one version, and sometimes we can also perform a rollback to the application that previously existed. But ultimately, we're talking about built-in updaters. The built-in updater is going to update to that latest version. Even if you go, okay, I'm going to not update Firefox because that latest version has an issue. Well, Firefox has a built-in updater that's probably going to do it. Mm-hmm. So they manage I guess what I like to call like a appcast of where their application gets the kind of the information to determine if it needs to update. So in some cases, you have to kind of lean on the vendor of that software to go, okay, like, hey, this is broken. What are we going to do about it? Because again, we are not typically distributing software. The vendor is, and we're just basically pointing kind of, I want to say basically, that's not really true, but to really short summarize that, the device is getting the software from the vendor. So yeah, it's something that, I think almost any of these patch management solutions, it's something to consider. And there may be some apps, like Spotify. Well, it doesn't matter for that, likely. It's not going to cause any productivity downtime if for some reason Spotify has an issue. But yeah, there may be some situations where, Zoom, your workplace can't function if there's some sort of issue with Zoom in the latest version, and hopefully you've disabled the kind of the update process for Zoom, which there is a property list for you to do that. Otherwise, it's going to be updated. But yeah, it's a fair point about essentially any sort of update that you do, you know, you want to make sure that the integrity of that update is good, and yeah.
Yeah, and I think even to add to what Ryan was saying too a bit is like our emphasis on testing, right? You know, if we have mission critical apps, that testing in prod. So you know, maybe deploying things to like a test group, or you know, creating like a sandbox environment to validate those things before we scope them out to the greater organization. But like Ryan said, we get that question quite often about like, hey, how do we pin versions? Like, because you know, I can't have my designers without Adobe, or you know, I can't have my dev team without you know, this homebrew dependency or something, like a release that came out that broke everything, like command line tools. So
Yeah, I mean, I also have an opinion about sticking with a specific version. Like we do have customers that say, hey, you know, I want N-1, you know, two versions back on this particular app. Well, if you do that, then you have to assume that that application has a security vulnerability. You're going, okay, I'm okay with a security vulnerability so that I can ensure that that application works, even though, again, like you probably aren't doing testing on the app anyways. So it's like, you know, what we want to make sure is that devices become in compliance as quickly as possible. We're not obviously trying to break apps out there, but you know, if Mac OS is out of date, you have to assume that there's a security vulnerability that is patched in the later version, just like any third-party software too. You know, if you look at release notes, it's kind of a joke, but if you look at Slack's release notes, sometimes they're like,
Bing, boom, bop.
fix some cool things.
Yep.
And it's like, okay, well, was there anything that we should be aware of here? Because, you know, that sometimes there are vulnerabilities, and I think there was just something just the other day that maybe it was ChatGPT or OpenAI, that they had an issue in something, but they knew about it and they didn't disclose it, and that definitely happened. So you have to assume if the company's willing, or your organization is willing to roll the dice on, you know, N-1, N-2, you know, you have to kind of figure out what the priority is.
Yeah. Cool.
Man,
Yeah, good questions.
Nice.
Anyone else? We can be here all night if you'd like.
I think people are getting antsy.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, we appreciate all the questions.
Yeah,
Great.
thank you guys.